Welcome back in, everybody, to Sports and Money, Pro Football GM. I'm Ben Parker. Privileged to have you back on board as always. Tonight, we're covering the Chargers and their salary cap situation. What's really spurred a lot of this on, and by the way, I hope you guys are all enjoying your NFL football. If you see this before the season is over, and if not, I hope you enjoy the offseason as we get into it. What really spurred this on is, as I've heard a lot of people discussing the Chargers head coaching opening, which may or may not get filled by Jim Harbaugh by the time you hear this. A lot of people nationally have been talking about how horrible the cap situation is for the Chargers. And so, of course, me being a guy that loves the cap, loves to study all the roster and everything else with it, got me intrigued. And so I went back in there and started digging around and looking at it. And my ultimate stance is, I'll bring this out in the numbers tonight. My ultimate stance is that I don't actually think the Chargers cap situation is too incredibly dire. And we'll go through some things that they can do here, and that's what I really love to do. Ultimately, though, I don't think it's horrible. I'll compare them to some other teams. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about specifically which moves they can make that will help them over this offseason, help them get back on a winning track, and help them with a cap management perspective. And that's where I'm going to go through. This will not be a long video. I'm not going to eat up a lot of time tonight, but let's go ahead and jump into it and welcome you along for the ride. So the NFL cap for next season, and of course, I don't think it's been officially announced yet, probably won't be for several weeks, but it is projected to be somewhere around $242 million. You may have a million or two either way. I don't think it's going to be a lot different. The NFL cap is generally relatively easy to predict, so it doesn't change a lot from one year to the next in terms of how much it grows and jumps. And the NFL usually doesn't want it to, because then it affects the free agency market too much, and players who sign contracts in one offseason kind of don't get a fair shake by the players who get one in the next offseason. So they don't want it to change too drastically percentage-wise from one year to the next. So looks like it's going to check in around $242 million, give or take $1 million, for NFL teams across the board. The Chargers happen to have an $8 million rollover that's going to add to that from this past season. So that puts them at basically $250.5 million is what they're basically allowed to spend without restructuring, without manipulating the cap any, without doing any of that stuff, right? Just straight up what they would normally be allowed to spend would be about $250.5 million. Tonight's numbers, by the way, are coming from SpotTrack. It's a website that you guys all know that I love. You can get most of the same information from Over the Cap, which is a different website that does largely the same thing. And a lot of this information you can find just all across the board, all across the internet. But I'm using tonight a lot of the numbers from SpotTrack, so by all means, go check them out. They do a tremendous job. So 250.5 is kind of sort of the Chargers' target number, if you will. We won't worry about the extra $500,000 there for the year. Their top 51 contracts, that is the top 51 guys that they already have under agreement for next year, doesn't count any of their free agents. Those guys are all scheduled to make $294.5 million. And you say, well, Ben, that's a lot of numbers you're starting to kick out there. It is. It's too much numbers for me to even listen to, but I'm just walking everybody through it who wants the numbers here. 294.5 already scheduled to pay out next year. That would put them at $44 million over the cap for next year. That's a lot of money, by the way. That's a hefty percentage. That's 20-25% over the cap. It's a very, very large number in terms of just absolute numbers. We're going to talk about what they can do about that in a second, but that is a lot. I want to start with that, and that's probably the number that a lot of the national folks are pulling from and being talked about and told about is, hey, anybody coming in here to the Chargers, while it's nice to have Herbert as the quarterback, it's also not a great cap situation, and it's not. They're going to be tight. Going to be some things they're going to have to do that they probably don't want to do. Some people in the building probably don't want to do this. Some Chargers fans may not want to do this, but there are things that they can do. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But $44 million is about where they're at over the cap for next year. I actually don't think this is as bad as some other teams that we've seen over the past two off seasons. One of those being the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Excuse me. Who basically threw everything all in on the Tom Brady years and who this past off season had a ginormous, I don't remember what it was something crazy, 60, 70, $80 million over the cap. It was a huge number that they were over the cap. They had to do all kinds of really disgusting things to get themselves back under for this 2023 season that they just completed with the Baker Mayfield run. So they had to do a lot of stuff, and the Chargers' options are a lot better than that. The New Orleans Saints last offseason had the same enormous cap number. I don't remember again what it was. I have to go back and look. You can probably pick it up quickly on Google. It may have been 80, 90, $100 million. And again, I don't remember, but it was a huge, massive cap number in which they didn't have a lot of good options. The Saints were very much boxed in. That was a disaster. Still is to a point. They essentially just doubled down on a lot of things from last offseason, restructured the heck out of a lot of contracts. So they're not in a great cap situation either last I looked. So that was worse for sure. And then the Philadelphia Eagles basically just stay on purpose. The Saints kind of were hanging on to the breeze and the I'm losing the head coach, but the Peyton era, they were hanging on to that era, trying to win, finishing out there, and the Buccaneers were trying to hang on to the Tom Brady window. The Philadelphia Eagles basically stay in a very complex, if you want to call it that, complex, messy cap situation. They do it that way on purpose. It's just the way they like it. They feel like they're getting better value and being able to manipulate and move things around. I'm not totally sure they are, but typically they're winning, so typically I leave the Eagles alone. They're just doing things a little different. It's not my way, but they're winning, so what the heck, I leave them alone. But those three teams all have cap situations that are far more complicated and messy than what the Chargers have here. So the Chargers, their starting point is $44 million over the cap as they sit right now, basically, and as we head into this offseason. So the first thing that I would do, and again, not all of these decisions are fun, and you don't want to do them. You never want to let go of good players, but these are just simple moves that will get them out of the situation that they're in. Number one would be Khalil Mack, trade or release. You can save $23 million off the top by trading or releasing Khalil Mack. And I know he had some nice sacks this year. He did a really good job getting to the quarterback this year. Really enjoy having him on the team. But you can save $23 million. No, it will incur a $15 million dead cap hit. But even after that dead cap space of $15 million, you still save. Even after the 15, you still save $23 million. So that's a very simple cut right off the top. And again, I don't think most people would relish the idea of letting Khalil Mack walk. But I'll say the same thing about Khalil Mack that I'm going to say about every one of these players. You didn't win with him on the team. So, how valuable is he really at this hefty price tag that you're just desperate to keep him? And some people say, well, you're not going to get much on the trade for him. Well, if you're not going to get much on the trade for him at this cap number and this age, then, again, why are you so eager to keep him? I think those are fair questions to be asked. They don't have to let go of Khalil Mack if they don't want to. They can let go of other people instead. But this is the one that I would do. I would let go of Khalil Mack. You incur a $15 million dead cap hit, but you save, after that, $23 million. And that's basically half of your $44 million right there, just right off the top. Very simple move if they decide to do it. My next move would be one of two guys. So there's two veteran wide receivers that they have on the team, one of them being Mike Williams, the other one being Keenan Allen. All right, and listen, nobody wants to let go of these guys. They have both served the team very well. Good NFL receivers. Really enjoyed both of them being on the team, but ultimately you cannot and you should not, really, because of age and injury and everything else, you should not try to hang on to all of these aging players. You really, one by one, want to carefully shed them when the time is appropriate and draft and develop new players to kind of take their place. And even if you don't draft and develop a wide receiver to take their spot, you draft and develop somebody else on the team that makes the team still whole and the team still stronger. So I would release one of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. I wouldn't overreact and release them both or trade both of them, but I would let go of one of them, and I think I would be inclined to let Mike Williams go. Keenan Allen seems to be the guy that's still producing and seems to be a little bit less injury prone, at least for right now. So I think I would keep Keenan Allen, but either way, I don't think the Chargers should try to keep both guys. I just don't. I really thought the Chargers should have drafted Zay Flowers in the last draft. They went in a different direction, of course, at wide receiver. That's fine. I get that. But I just don't think it's wise to try to keep both guys. From an age standpoint, from an injury standpoint, from a cap standpoint, I think it's time to move on from at least one of them, not both of them. So I'm fine. If y'all want to keep Williams or Allen, either one, I think I would let Mike Williams go and keep Keenan Allen for the upcoming season. If you let Williams walk, it does incur a $12.5 million dead cap hit, but after that, you are saving, on top of that, $20 million. So his cap hit's going to be something like 32.5. 12.5 of that goes to the dead cap. 20 is savings. So if you released Williams and Mack, that's $43 million of your $44 million just right there. Two guys, it's gone. And again, I know nobody wants to let these guys go, but you didn't win with them, So how valuable can they be at these ages and at these prices? It's a fair question to ask, and it's certainly the questions that everybody in Charger land has to ask. If you release Allen, $11.6 million dead cap hit, but even after that, even taking that into consideration, you are saving $23 million. So if you were to release Mack and Allen, that's $46 million, and that takes care of your $44 million overage that you're facing for next season. The fourth thing that you could look at doing, well, I say look at doing, this is probably going to happen, is Corey Linsley retiring. Wish him the best. Hate it for him, what he's having to kind of go through here at the end of his career. He said, last I heard, 99% chance that he is going to retire. So that would create a $9 million cap savings just right there. So if Linsley does indeed retire, and we wish him the best for it, but that's 9. If you let go of Mack and Williams, that's 43 plus the 9 is $52 million. You're $8 million under the cap now. So you've already set that in place. Eric Kendricks is really the last guy I would look at here. He's got, I think he's $9.2 million cap hit this year. If you cut or trade him, $2.8 million dead cap hit, but you save 6.5. So if you're just like, man, we're trying to get younger, Kendricks was fine last year. He really was. Played even better all around than I thought. I thought he would contribute in the run D, but he actually contributed pretty much well all the way around, I thought. So if you want to save 6.5 there, just in an effort to try to get newer and younger, that's fine. You also save the 6.5 there. So they have options, and that's the key point here. That's Mack, Williams, Allen, Linsley, Kendricks. That's 5 guys, any 2 or 3 of which easily, I say easily because it's quick, right? I mean, we're cutting it to the bone here, but it's quick. That easily saves you anywhere from $40 to $50 million, just very easily. So the Chargers have options. They have guys that they can let go of, and these are the obvious guys. After that, I know people are talking about Joey Bosa and Derwin James. I don't think either guy is heading out the door. Both are still relatively young. I think they can both still regain the form that we have seen from them in the past. It wasn't their best seasons, we know that, but Bosa's definitely not going anywhere, and I don't think Derwin James is going anywhere, even as I look at it from afar. Wasn't James's best season, admittedly. Still, I think James is the guy you keep. I think it's obvious to me, anyway, that James is the guy you keep back there at safety, and you keep paying him for another year. Could the Chargers go the Eagles route and just restructure everybody and keep them all? Yeah, you can, but there's really not a point to that. The point I want to make again is you had these guys and you didn't win with them. And if these guys' trade value is so low at their age and cap hit combinations, then why would you necessarily want to keep all of them? Keep some of them, keep the ones you want to keep, and we would all differ on exactly who that would be. Keep the ones you want to keep, let the other ones go, get yourself back into a good cap situation in one offseason, by the way. I didn't even mention any P61 cuts here involved here at all. This is in one offseason that this gets you back into a good cap situation. What about the free agents that they've got to re-sign? Well, there's nothing saying that you have to re-sign any of your free agents, any of the big ones. But if you did, if you want that extra bit of money, you could let Eric Kendricks walk. You could cut Eric Kendricks or trade him. Creates the 6.5. If you wanted to have a little bit extra there, you've got cornerback Michael Davis, linebacker Kenneth Murray, both to think about. I would consider bringing back both of those guys. Tight end Gerald Everett. I don't necessarily feel like I have to bring him back. I feel like I can find comparable tight ends in the draft if I want to, or find a money-saving tight end. Safety Gilman, defensive lineman Austin Johnson, wide receiver Jalen Guyton. I would like to bring back Guyton for sure. Austin Eckler, maybe should have already traded him. They didn't want to do it. They ended up not doing that, so we'll see about that. So there are free agents here that you would want to re-sign, but I don't necessarily say that these are huge money guys. It's going to make a drastic difference. If you have a couple of guys that you want to keep there, then you can go ahead and restructure a contract, maybe to the tune of $5 or $10 million. Gives you that extra wiggle room. Then the interesting question is, well, what if we want to go out in free agency and get somebody? Well, that's when you start to really look at really cutting some of these guys. Maybe instead of one wide receiver, you cut two of them. Or maybe instead of only letting go of Khalil Mack, you also let go of Mack and Eric Kendricks off the defensive side. So essentially, this team needs a good defensive coordinator to come in here and do a good job. They need a head coach to come in here and do a good job. And that will solve the most problems. And then you can go back and play in around the free agency a little bit if you want to. But I still like where the Chargers are overall. They've done things over the past couple of seasons I wouldn't have necessarily done. That's okay. It's their way to do it. But my main point is, and I think I've made it obvious, so the Chargers are still okay cap-wise. It's not pretty and it's not pleasant, but they have some pretty simple ways, as I'm looking at it here, some pretty simple doors to open and close and just move on. And you get yourself in decent cap space. All right, that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great one. Enjoy your football. Enjoy the off season. We'll see you later. Bye.